Jewish humor is the long tradition of humor in Judaism dating back to the Torah and the Midrash from the ancient Middle East, but generally refers to the more recent stream of verbal and often anecdotal humor of Ashkenazi Jewry which took root in the United States over the last 100 years, including in secular Jewish culture. European Jewish humor in its early form developed in the Jewish community of the Holy Roman Empire, with theological satire becoming a traditional way of clandestinely opposing Christianization. Modern Jewish humor emerged during the 19th century among German-speaking Jews of the Haskalah, matured in the shtetls of the Russian Empire, and then flourished in 20th-century America, arriving with the millions of Jews who emigrated from Eastern Europe between the 1880s and the early 1920s, beginning with vaudeville and continuing through radio, stand-up comedy, film, and television. A disproportionately high percentage of American, German, and Russian comedians have been Jewish. A Psychology Today study estimates that 80% of American professional comics are Jews. Jewish humor, while diverse, favors wordplay, irony, and satire, and its themes are highly anti-authoritarian, mocking religious and secular life alike. Sigmund Freud considered Jewish humor unique in that its humor is primarily derived from mocking of the in-group rather than the other. However, rather than simply being self-deprecating, it also contains a dialectical element of self-praise, which works in the opposite direction. History. Jewish humor is rooted in several traditions. Recent scholarship places the origins of Jewish humor in one of history's earliest recorded documents, the Hebrew Bible, as well as the Talmud, in particular, the intellectual and legal methods of the Talmud, which uses elaborate legal arguments and situations often seen as so absurd as to be humorous, in order to tease out the meaning of religious law. Hillel Halkin, in his essay about Jewish humor, traces some roots of the Jewish self-deprecating humor to the medieval influence of Arabic traditions on the Hebrew literature by quoting a witticism from Yehuda al-Harazi's Targumoni. A more recent one is an egalitarian tradition among the Jewish communities of Eastern Europe in which the powerful were often mocked subtly, rather than attacked overtly. As Saul Bellow once put it, oppressed people tend to be witty, just as known as badchans used to poke fun at prominent members of the community during weddings, creating a good-natured tradition of humor as a leveling device. Rabbi Moshe Waldok's, a scholar of Jewish humor, argued, "You have a lot of shtok or jab humor, which is usually meant to deflate pomposity or ego, and to deflate people who consider themselves high and mighty. But Jewish humor was also a device for self-criticism within the community, and I think that's where it really was the most powerful. The humorist, like the prophet, would basically take people to task for the failings. The humor of Eastern Europe especially was centered on defending the poor against the exploitation of the upper classes or other authority figures. So rabbis were made fun of, authority figures were made fun of, and rich people were made fun of. It really served as a social catharsis. After Jews began to immigrate to America in large numbers, they, like other minority groups, found it difficult to gain mainstream acceptance and obtain upward mobility. The newly developing entertainment industry, combined with the Jewish humor tradition, provided a potential route for Jews to succeed. One of the first successful radio sitcoms, The Goldbergs, featured a Jewish family. As radio and television matured, many of its most famous comedians, including Jack Benny, Sid Caesar, George Burns, Eddie Cantor, Jack Carter, Henny Youngman, and Milton Berle, were Jewish. The Jewish comedy tradition continues today, with Jewish humor much entwined with that of mainstream humor, as comedies like Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Woody Allen films indicate. Sigmund Freud, in his Jokes and the Relation to the Unconscious, among other things, analyzes the nature of Jewish jokes.